Calling this meeting to order. It is 1:32 p.m. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phones and limit any background noise. If you're on Zoom, please mute yourself and leave all questions to the end of each presentation. I have the roll call. Rama?
Welcome, everyone. If you could please start the roll call. If you can please say here present, state if you are with any organization, and give a brief introduction of who you are and a description of yourself. Laura Saltzman.
Should have said at the outset. So yes, my name is Laura Saltzman, she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman in her 30s, brown hair that's up. I have glasses. I'm wearing a navy and white polka dot dress, and I'm the senior policy analyst from Access Living.
Lincoln Edwards will be joining us today. Cynthia Fosco.
Here, my name is Cindy Fosco. I am a member of the Alumni Association for Guide Dogs for the Blind. And I do a lot of volunteer work in the community, especially with Second Sense downtown. And I am a 50-year-old white woman with significant vision loss. And I have a guide dog at my feet. Her name's Pepper. And I have short blonde wavy hair, and I'm wearing a blue dress.
Barbara Padilla. She has an excused absence. Sandra Fernandez.
Present. My name is Sandra Fernandez. I'm a 30-year-old Hispanic woman with glasses, slick back ponytail, with a red t-shirt on, and I am a independent disability advocate.
Dr. Delphine Lab.
Here, my name is Delphine Labbe. I'm a professor in the Department of Disability and Human Development at the University of Illinois, Chicago. I am a woman in her 40s, long brown hair, wearing glasses. I have right now a white shirt and red blazers.
Thank you. Johnny Gonzalez. He's absent. Giselle Nunes. Also absent. Zoe Leonard has an excused absence.
Zoe. I woke up sick, but present, Zoe Lanier, 30s, she, her, Asian, in my capacity as a disability advocate.
Thank you, Zoe. Milton Lash.
Milton Lash, older Black man, gray hair, short, advocate for disability 88.
Thank you, Milton. Jada Thompson.
Jada Thompson, she, they. I am been presenting a Black woman in my 20s. I have a blue jean jacket that's very beige with designs and drawings. I also have locks and two pigtails and two locks on the side. I am a disability advocate, and I am a member of various organizations, including the Disabled People of Color Coalition, Best Buddies, and Chicagoland Autism Connection.
Thank you, Jada. And finally, but not least, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Luna. I am a board member of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois. I'm glad I could be here with y'all today, as I just returned from the National Federation of the Blind National Convention in New Orleans. I am a Mexican-American, African-American female in my late 20s. I am wearing all Black with pink and silver accessories, and my hair is pulled back. Glad to be here with all of you.
Thank you. Then moving on to CTA facilitators, myself, Irma Gomez Fierro, I'm the ADA Compliance Programs Manager here at CTA. I am a fair-skinned Latina with brown hair. I'm currently wearing glasses and a red maroon shirt. I am also a wheelchair user. Up next, Elsa Gutierrez.
My name is Elsa Gutierrez. I'm the VP of Scheduling and Service Planning. I am a Latina, early 50s with brown hair up to my shoulders, glasses, and a white shirt with some blue color items with a necklace as well.
And then Molly Poppy.
She'll be joining us a little bit later.
She'll be joining us later. I also want to present to you my intern for this year, Anna.
Hi, y'all. I'm Anna Stevens, she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with, I guess, medium length brown hair. I am in a black and white striped shirt today. I am the ADA compliance intern, and I'm just happy to be here with y'all.
Thank you. All right, so we have 7 people present, both virtually and in person, so that makes a quorum. Up next is announcements. Or
Does anyone have any disability-related announcements they would like to share? I have one. Oh, virtually, no. So I do want to note that next Monday, July 21st, at 1 o'clock, the Committee on Pedestrian and Traffic Safety in City Council is hosting a subject matter hearing on sidewalk repairs. Obviously, this is an issue that comes up a lot at our committee or at this committee. And so if you want to give public comment or attend, I mean, there will be a virtual session. One, you can give public written comment by emailing the Committee on Pedestrian and Traffic Safety at, I think, gmail.com. I had this pulled up. Committee on Pedestrian and Traffic Safety at cityofchicago.org. You can also attend in person. I will, and if you have my email, you can email me about this, but I do think it's important for them to hear, particularly from, advocates in the community on what bad sidewalk conditions, how that affects, and like how that can create problems for like when we make accessible transit. If people can't get to the transit, that's a huge problem. So anyway.
Yeah, I might add an event then, sorry. I shared with you, Irma. This is the National Disability Council is hosting a series of webinars, workshops on ground transportation for people with disabilities. It starts July 23rd. It's going to go weekly until the end of August. So also if you want to learn more, learn about the policies, they're really looking at like policies gap and why things might be the way they are. So I think that could be interesting for many people.
and I will share that flyer with everyone. So,
Sarah, I just wanted to share that the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois will be having our annual state convention in October, from October 17th to the 19th in Naperville. And you can go to nfbofillinois.org to learn more.
Anyone else? Big ones? Okay, then we have the approval of the April 14th, 2025 meeting minutes. They were sent prior to members prior to the meeting for review. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, either as written?
So moved.
Sarah moves. Can I have a second?
Second.
Diva seconded. All votes in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Ayes have it. We are now moving to public comment. Irma, is there any public comment?
yes, we do have one public comment from Karen Ford, but before we move to the public comment, I do want to state that last meeting, we received a public comment to reinstate a bus stop on Broadway and Montrose. And after collaboration with CDOT, we have installed the bus stop as of last Thursday. Jeremy is actually going to speak a little bit more about it, but just wanted to give that update.
Thank you.
Karen, thank you. Yeah.
Would you like me to go in the center or?
Yeah.
I see somebody says, good afternoon, folks. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for having me. First, let me start out by saying I love the CTA. I've been riding the CTA for almost 60 years. My dad put me on my first bus by myself when I was 9, and I fell in love with the CTA right then. So I've been riding it ever since. My comment, and I told this to Irma, we constantly get updates about the fact that the CTA is accessible. And like there are new stations that are going to be open and that the elevators work and all the rest of that stuff. And that is wonderful. My issue is I can get on the platform, but I can't get on the train. And most of that is because, as you know, the train and the platform are not even. And so we need that little bridge that goes across there. And unfortunately, a lot of the personnel are kind of unwilling to get out of the little seat or out of the little booth to come and put that up. And also it's hard to get off the train if you're on the red line. And let's say you come downtown and you're on Jackson or any of the stations that are underground. The person is upstairs and you're downstairs. And so you can't get off the train to get on. I don't ride the train. I ride the buses all the time. Because in order for me to take a train, my husband has to be with me because he has to lift this onto the train or onto the platform. So I ride buses all the time. And for the most part, the bus drivers are very, very nice, very helpful. I've only had a couple of instances where a bus driver just drove past me because he didn't want to stop and he saw me with my card and they just kept on going and didn't stop. But for the most part, the bus drivers are great. So why I'm wondering if in the future, because I realize you can't do it now, there are going to be buses with, trains with a ramp or something that come out automatically that allow you to get from the platform onto the train and then from the train until the platform. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I do, one, thank you for your comment. 2, if you ever have time to file complaints when bus drivers are driving by you, transitchicago.org so that we know. If that's not okay. But I will say that this is, I want to flag this operations. This is a consistent issue I've heard. It is why we have pushed for kind of a more senior position for the CSAs, but for the meantime, like that is supposed to be a role. I think we're all on the same page here, but yeah, that's not okay. And you should be able to use the red line. So we'll follow up, but yeah, hear you and we'll push this, but this is not. So we have been pushing for a role that makes that more consistent, but for now, yeah, that's supposed to be the case, so.
Can I ask you a question? Are we live? Yeah. What is the procedures right now? Because I'm wondering, like, is the person who come and help to get in the train would be able to call the person at the next station and being on this numbered train, someone is coming up and that person is supposed to come down and wait for that person to arrive? Is that the current procedure?
Yes. During training, they all get trained that when they see someone with a mobility device, they're supposed to go up to them and ask, do you need assistance? And then based on the person's response, if they do need assistance and it's the gap filler, we would go out with the person, put down the gap filler, down the train number and where they're headed, and then call control so that control can let the other CSC at the other end know to take up the gap filler for that person.
Do you know how many times or how that kind of call happened and where the control, like, because it seems there's a lot of stuff. So the steps, I'm wondering, like, is there like the control is not calling on time? Is that something that can be more automated? Can there be a little sign happening like in that train coming like, hey, you have someone who's going to come? I don't know. Just thinking if there's ways to, for now, before the trains come with automatic platform, that this process becomes more, and if the person doesn't do it, you can complain. Again, say it that like, I didn't get help at that station.
Yeah, please file a complaint. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you not have to.
No, that's okay, because that has happened to me. I got on the train at Belmont, and the person was very nice. They put the little thing out and strapped me in and everything and said, he said, where are you going? And I said, 79th Street. And he said, I will call ahead and let them know that you're coming. And we got to 79th Street. Nobody was there. And so, like I said, my husband had to lift this to whatever. So I know I figured there was a process, but, you having a process and somebody actually doing the process or following the process are two different things.
Totally.
It's just like if I get on a bus and a bus driver will tell me, well, I don't know how to work the little cord that goes around here. And I'm going, well, you can't drive off until I'm secured. So you got to figure out how to work this. And I was telling Irma, my solution was I bought my own bungee cords. So if I get on a bus and driver tells me that, I can hook myself onto a seat, onto a thing. But for the most part, most of the bus drivers are great.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, in the instant in which the CSA is not at the platform, then the operator is to get off and put the gap filler. And that's why the gap fillers are at the platform, so that they can get off and, they would call control center and said, we're holding, and then they move the gap filler. So the operators are also equipped to be able to do that. Obviously, it's in live service. It's easier when the CSA does it so that service can continue. And I think what's helpful, what you described right now is a date, time, location, so that we could either do retraining or a refresher to make sure that this is occurring, because it is a policy and it should be followed. And if it's not followed, then we may need to re-instruct personnel that are at those locations. And I know that you can, you had mentioned that people can approach you, but there's also buttons where you can ask persons to meet you where you're at. So if you're by the entrance of the station and they can see you, but if you're already on the platform, there's also buttons for the CSA to come up to the platform and assist.
Okay. Do that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Yeah, I think if you can communicate it to operations, I would say at this point, worth communicating it to everyone, because I've heard so many instances where, and people don't, right? They get sick of, they don't want to file a complaint. So there's gonna be a number of folks who don't do this. And again, we've pushed for there to be a more senior job. I get that but this needs to be fixed, and the train operators need to know. So I would actually say at this point, everyone needs to, maybe not the full training, but everyone needs to understand this is policy, this is required. You have to do this.
Got it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
That's all for public comment. Yes. Now we are moving to our presentations, and the first is a construction update presented by Bill Mooney, Chief Infrastructure Officer.
You guys turn on sharing. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Bill Mooney, the Chief Infrastructure Officer for the Chicago Transit Authority. I am a mid-40s white male with graying beard and hair, wearing glasses and a plaid shirt that is, it's like an orange, pink, maybe salmon, and blue, light blue and dark blue, and light blue pants. I'm always glad to be here and provide this update on your quarterly basis on our major construction projects. So I will move into the presentation. The agenda slide for today lists a series of bullet points with text. The first one says ASAP program update. The second one says Racine ASAP. Third one is Austin ASAP. And the final bullet point is the Red Purple Modernization Phase 1 project. Moving to the All Stations Accessibility Program update slide. This provides a high-level overview of the current ASAP plan projects and their phasing. Not a lot has changed since my last quarterly update. I do provide this monthly at our general board meeting, so updates between our meetings and those meetings you can also pick up on the Zoom channels. It's posted on our website as well. It notes the projects currently in construction phase: Lawrence on the red line, Argyle on the red line, Berwyn on the red line, Bryn Mawr on the red line, which are all part of the RPM projects. As well as then Racine on the blue line, Austin on the green line, and Staten Lake on the loop. Staten Lake is just given the notice to proceed to CDOT is given the notice to proceed to their contractor, and that work will be starting later this year, early next year. And then we've got a couple projects that are completed, kind of are moving out of design phase. California, which has actually been an active procurement, and hopefully will be looked to get awarded in the upcoming months. That's on the blue line. Montrose on the blue line, which is still an ongoing design. Our ongoing elevator rehab projects, which are part of the ASAP program, of which we have 16 funded right now, which are currently still in design. And we're just starting design on Belmont on the blue line and Irving Park on the blue line. And we're just finishing up clearing our planning environmental process for Pulaski on the blue line, Oak Park on the green line, and Ridgeland on the green line. Onto the projects that are in active construction. This next slide shows a picture of what we call the waterfall stairwell and the elevator tower kind of at Racine. This is the new station house that we are constructing as part of the Racine ASAP project. In this picture, you can see a green man lift with a worker in it who is installing the canopy on that staircase. You can also see it's a south position camera view looking north at the tall elevator tower for the station on the exterior with the precast panel cladding. The next picture is probably one of the most underappreciated aspects of any of these new station projects. It is the new electrical installation. This photo shows the new electrical vaults that Commonwealth Edison is actually putting in on the adjacent parkway to the station. We had to drill underneath the highway to bring new electrical feeds to the station. One of the big challenges of all these ASAP projects is elevators consume a significant amount more energy than the older station, smaller station footprints would have been. So they all require brand new electrical services as part of the installation. That means we actually have to bring in a whole new feed. And when there are these highway median stations, it gets even more complicated because you actually have to go under the highway to make that connection. Which not only is an Office of Underground Permitting issue through the city of Chicago, you actually have to go through and permit separately through IDOT for that so that you don't collapse the highways. So this was actually a huge hurdle in this project, and something that we've been actively working on with IDOT is improving the relationship going forward. But this was a great milestone to be able to see them putting this vault in place and starting to connect us, and we are preparing to electrify those feeds to give us the power to start commissioning on the elevators. The next slide I am showing is the interior of the Racine Station House. You can see the white glazed brick tile all the way around on the surround, as well as the new lighting framing in the ceiling with the new lights and all the conduits. The station house is coming together. We are right now targeting a late September, early October opening. We're kind of refining into those dates. A lot of that depends on the commissioning process of the elevator, which is a pretty complicated piece of equipment. And hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have a better update for the committee on exact timing of those dates. The next slide I flipped to is of the canopy installation at the Racine Station. So it shows the platform looking down it with the canopy and a system that are called purlins. So these are kind of substructural elements that are being installed on top of the canopy. This station house gets a new translucent canopy as part of the project. And so these purlins are what that new translucent canopy gets attached to. So this is the first portion of that installation. After they finish the painting of the old historical steel there, then they install the purlins, and then the translucent goes on top of it. And that will be phased over a couple months, the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, with a series of kind of back rides to the station where only one half of the platform will be available as they're working directly overhead. Moving on to our Austin ASAP project. On the green line, the next slide shows the expansion of the new Austin Station House. So as part of the project, we are expanding the footprint of the Austin Station House. Here you can see the new walls that have been poured. This is for the rear of the back of the house areas for the new station house, including the new electrical room, the new communications room, and the upgraded washroom facilities. The most interesting update actually occurred for Austin this morning at 3:30 in the morning, which associates with the next slide I have flipped to, which shows the Austin entrance being closed. At 3:30 this morning, we opened the temporary entrance at Mason, which we will be using to provide service through the station over the next, like 5 months, 6 months or so, while we then do all the major important work necessary to install the elevator into the small footprint that was the existing Austin Station House. So this photo shows the entrance door for the existing Austin Station with a sign that says entrance closed. The next photo I have flipped to is of the new head house being opened this morning at Austin, or the Mason entrance at Austin on the Green Line. Here is a platform level photo looking at that head house that is wrapped in stainless steel around the rooftop. It has an out to Mason Avenue to Austin Boulevard sign on it and a stairwell that goes down. The next photo I have flipped through is the interior of that new Mason Station House that shows the temporary fare equipment in place. There are choose turnstiles, as well as brand new glazed brick tiles surrounding the whole entire area in white and a cement ground floor. And then the next photo I have flipped through is the exterior photo that shows new storefront entrance for Mason with a sign that says Green and Austin on it. And then you can see the head house lit up in the horizon up at platform level as well. So this was a pretty big milestone to get to the point to be able to make this phase change, which is really important for our work now to be able to start focusing on installing the elevator and restoring the whole corner at Austin, building out the new station entrance, and ultimately making the station fully accessible. Moving on to RPM. I will pause before I get to the photos, and I know that some members of the committee were able to join me a few weeks back, and we did a station tour at Bryn Mawr for the stations before they were available for opening, and you were able to see kind of them in the final construction. I thought that was a really great opportunity. I appreciate those members that were able to take the time and join us and provide feedback on that, and we've already started working on some of that feedback and make sure we get it, what we couldn't improve upon here, we make sure we pick up on the next one. So that your feedback on all these projects is always really important, and we do appreciate it. The other two things I would kind of note is, if you haven't heard at this point, we opened the brand new fully accessible stations this upcoming Sunday. So at I think it's like 2 a.m. we go into service on the new track structure on Sunday, and all the new stations will be cut over to from the temporary facilities we're using right now to the brand new Bryn Mawr, Berwyn, Argyle, and Lawrence. It is a very significant, exciting moment for the project team and for the city as a whole. And we've had a lot of partners throughout the way, and so we are grateful for all the effort there. On Sunday, probably any minute now, if not this evening, you will see a link go out online for an Eventbrite sign up for a commemorative ride on the first train on the new structure. We have an 8-car wrap train that we will be handing out commemorative ride tickets for people to come on board the train and ride through a banner marking the opening of service on that. And then the grand events are kind of staged with the politicals on Monday for the true ribbon cuttings and stuff. But Sunday is for the fans. And so if you want to come out at 8 o'clock in the morning and ride that commemorative first train, you can join me out there. I'm looking forward to that experience. But my big requirement is when we did the phase change from stage A to stage B, we had a little banner that we ran through. I asked for a big banner this time, so we'll see what we get. So onto the slides I'm showing you actually in proper. So this is actually in the red-purple bypass area, which we haven't talked a lot about since we finished that work back in May. This is some subsurface kind of grade work. So here you can see the restoration of the plaza that we've been doing work in at Clark and Roscoe. This is right on the corner there. This remains kind of an activated public space post-project, just kind of a pass-through plaza available to the public underneath the structure there. And these are ornamental pavers in that plaza. The next photo, some of you will recognize from your tour, is from Bryn Mawr with the fare array in the station. This is actually at the Hollywood entrance side of Bryn Mawr here. So you can see in this photo the fare array directly in front of you with the new accessible gates, as well as the stainless steel wrapping. You can see the customer assistant booth off in the background, the finished ceiling, and the full granite floors here. This next photo is at Berwyn, and so this is the exterior of the station, where you have them pouring the final concrete footprint right out in front of the station around one of the columns in what we call the oculus. The oculus is actually just kind of, they fit the canopy for the exterior of the station around the column and wrapped it and provided ornamental lighting that kind of goes back like a ray of light. And so they kind of took that feature of that column that had to be there for the structure and built it into the station architectural to make it kind of neat and deliberate here. And it's kind of one of those accent features of that portion of the station. Next photo I'm showing is of the exterior of Argyle, where they're painting the rooftop edge of the station exterior. And you can see up beyond that, there is special architectural lighting at Argyle. Argyle has kind of its own unique architectural features that came out of a lot of the community process here. It has an accent red brick on the exterior, which you can see in this photo with the storefront glass. As well as this, what we call the trapezoid or Tetris lighting that can change colors and work in lighting displays based on seasonal lighting. If you wanted to do red and green at Christmas and things like that. Argyle also has a very, for those that may know the area, used to have an Asian on Argyle sign that was exterior. It has a very similar kind of representation of an Argyle exterior sign that's mounted up there now. It mirrors kind of that trapezoid inner grit design lighting that also mirrors down to the pavement work as well. So there is a paver plan that matches kind of all of it and draws it together on the exterior. And the next photo I have flipped to shows the Bryn Mawr platform being cleaned for its final sealing and the installation of the blue tactile edge. In this photo, there's 2 workers power washing the platform and scrubbing it clean. After it's cleaned, then they actually treat it with an anti-graffiti sealant, and then they put in the blue tactile edge. In the beginning, July 20th, 2025, we plant our flag. While there will be some work that concludes through the rest of this year, we actually call Phase C, where we have to take down the temporary stations right now. One of the stations at Argyle is actually built over one of the tracks. And so we actually have to finish that little section of track and once that temporary station goes away. And then we've got a whole bunch of punch lists that we got to clean up over the next 6 months. And then we move on to the activation stuff, which will begin next year, which I know we talked about last quarter as well. It's a pretty significant, exciting milestone, again, for the team, for the CTA, and for the city. So this is 4 stations from our ASAP Phase 1 plan checked off the list. I'm glad to take any questions on any of the items I've covered.
Congratulations. This is a big accomplishment. And like, I know a number of people who are really, really excited. So, well, first of all, congrats. I always have my questions, but does anyone have questions? David?
I do. I've noticed that a lot of the station colors has like, a particular white, beige kind of color. Is there a reason to that as to why it's only like white or grayish colors, or like not any other colors to be per se? Is that for like accessibility reasons or just a CTA thing? I don't know.
So we generally really like white glazed brick, subway tile glazed brick. It's just a color that from a maintainability standpoint serves very well for us. But your question about why you have it's black and white are the 2 prominent colors you'll see in all 4 stations. So all 4 stations carry those 4 colors through them. It's an accent that the architect chose. I will tell you that architects right now really like black as a color for brick. It's like a thriving thing in architecture coming back out. It's a new modern color. We do a lot of work with Carol Ross Barney as an architect for us. She designed a couple substations for us, and they're all black brick substations. And it's a thing in architecture. Architecture, like art, works through phases and waves, and that's kind of a budding thing. So the architects of record, EXP, Tom Hoff is the head architect. He's really the visionary on it. And this was his vision kind of for the initial stations. They went out through a community process. I did note that Argyle has this pop of red to it, and that was something that came out of that community input process around the station design, where we went through a series of meetings around that. And the community, the Asian community in that quarter, especially around Argyle, is very vocal and very engaged and has a very strong identity. And they really wanted Argyle tied to that identity. And the old Argyle station had, what do they call it? I say it's gazebo, but it's not. they had a faux roof to the station that was very meaningful to the community that gets replaced. We've salvaged it. It doesn't really have a home yet, but they wanted some of that color and tone to be brought into the station. They wanted some of those enhancements. And so it gets a little different color. But to answer fundamentally your question is why black and white? It's because that's the palette the architect kind of proposed and was kind of put out there. And that was kind of what we received because that's kind of where the world's at right now. So. You'll see like Racine also has a lot of white subway tile. From a lighting of a space, it really helps keep the space bright and airy when you're talking about some of these spaces that don't get a lot of natural light at times. It really helps with that. And it does clean better than other colors in some cases.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was a safety, because I think it also helps for a feeling of safety.
Yep.
It laterally creates a space that's safe.
We prescribe a lot in our design documents, not necessarily the requirement that the walls be white, but how you manage around. We talked a little bit about this with design when we did the tour with Bryn Mawr. You have to do a hazards analysis, right? So you look at the environment you're designing, you have to identify all the risks that are in that environment, and then you have to design around mitigations around those risks. And lots of times, lighting placement, camera placement, color of tile, and things like that get into a lot of those things.
Any other questions? Virtually or here? Then, all right, then I will. So did you say the Racine, it's translucent, or you just mean like that first part?
The platform at Racine will have a translucent canopy.
Will it still, like when it's sunny, provide, like how will, like, I'm just thinking about like hot, like it gets pretty hot, like standing under the.
So we use the translucent canopy. It's a blue, translucent blue.
Okay.
So if you look at the Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill designs of the 1960s from the red line stations and the blue line stations on the O'Hare, they all had the bubble canopies that were all kind of sunlit. So we've been using clear canopies for a long time. We've replaced a lot of those with these flatter translucent canopies. Garfield on the green line, Wilson Station. They have an offset color tone for lighting in there. They tend to be very pleasant environment wise. So I find that my favorite one's Irving Park on the blue line. If you take the escalator up, it feels like you're going up into the sky because you come up and you see the canopy as you're coming up and you see the sky in front of you. I think it's a really cool effect. But they really, I don't think they make a big difference. And I think they actually help reflect a little bit of the lighting a little bit around.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to double check and I'm very focused on it because it's kind of hot up right now.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes this is CDOT or like the nearby businesses, but making sure that the path of travel, especially as stations become accessible, that the sidewalks, like especially for the block around, I know a couple of them like currently the sidewalks are not in the great condition. Is that going to be?
So we actually did a significant, on RPM specifically, we did a significant street improvement in the impact zone of the station. So we took it back. It's like half a block even in some cases where we did.
Yeah, no, I know.
Did the alley egress points around those stations, the alleys themselves. We did the footprint of the station. We took it back into a bunch of the businesses on either side. And then we ended up having to lower this. We lower the streets in all these cases too, to create better height for the structure. Even though the height went up, we also lowered the streets. We meet with CDOT quarterly as an executive team. We go over updates on these projects, make them aware as well about where we're making these improvements and these investments so they can plan their streetscape programs around that. And we do try and actively work with them on trying to get them. Austin on the green line does deal with path of travel even differently because Austin actually would be a fully inaccessible station, even if we put an elevator in there, because to get from the street to the station, you have to go up like 4 steps. So we actually, we as part of our project, rescope, we slant the streetscape and lower it to be able to make it fully accessible from curb line to curb line. And then CDOT and Oak Park also have separate exterior projects. Oak Park is actually accessible on their corners, but CDOT's doing one on the other side to be able to facilitate around that too. So we do encourage our friends at CDOT to look at that as we make these investments as well.
Actually, then I remember, and CDOT will be here, is here right now. So you can look forward to that question when you guys present. But thank you. Oh, and I just wanted to note, I think that there's a really nice, I know that I saw that you guys like the crosswalk feature between the entrances and exits, so you made it easier if you're crossing from the street from one side of the station to the other, at least on Berwyn, so.
Yeah, so we do have some mid-block crossings we've been able to coordinate with CDOT. Argyle's got one and Berwyn's got one, and so we tried to facilitate some of that, especially when we have bus routes, right? So you have a bus that's making a stop on both directions, and so we've been able to coordinate and plan a little bit around those, so.
That's, anyone else have Comments, questions? Going once, twice? Thank you so much.
It's great seeing everyone. Have a nice one.
See you next week, I guess. And next we have traffic bus stop updates presented by Jeremy Safran, Senior Manager of Traffic Planning.
See here. Go full screen. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Safran, Senior Manager of Traffic Planning at the CTA, and my group deals with bus stops, among other things. Oh. It's not sharing?
No.
Okay. Oh. Is that doing it?
Yes, it's upset.
Okay, great. Thank you for your help. So today I'm going to be providing a status update on the tactile bus signs program. These are, as you'll see, signs that go up at all of our bus stops that will inform visually impaired people that they're waiting at a bus stop rather than some other sign. So for some background, we originally came up with the idea for the project a few years ago based on some complaints received at this meeting and then other meetings. There was an issue where vision impaired customers were unable to identify which pole they should wait at to catch the bus. Since all of the poles, CDOT, sign regulations for parking, any, one-way street signs and our bus stops share the same pole. So if you just go to a pole, you can't be quite sure which one is the bus stop. So based on that feedback, we developed a program to put these tactile blue bus stop signs, which are pictured here on the slide. They're small blue signs that are mounted at a 5-foot height so that folks can, easily access them according to ADA principles and, with raised lettering and Braille, identify that they're in fact waiting at a bus stop. We were awarded, a grant from RTA to pay for a pilot rollout. And since July 2022, we've rolled out over 3,000 signs on over 3,000 bus stops on 25 different routes. Those pilot installations and the contract have since been completed. And we're looking to do more. And I'll get into that in the next slide. Okay, so the next contract, which went to the June CTA board, was approved, and that will allow us to complete the rollout of the tactile blue bus stop signs to the entire system. So over 10,000 bus stops in the entire system. That will include additional signs for replacement with any issues that happen during rollout. And there's a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options to complete the installations and to continue manufacturing more. Our in-house forces will be doing those installations. This also was powered by an RTA grant, and we will start these installations hopefully fall 2025, assuming the contractor responsible for making them can ramp up their production. It is complex. It's a metal compound. They need to have a mold so that everything comes out just right and they can scale up production accordingly. We hope to complete system-wide installation by 2029, early 2029, ideally. The image here, the map here on this slide shows in red the routes that we've completed rollout to, and in blue, the routes that we need to do. So we've heard that the blue bus stop signs, again, which say bus stop in raised lettering and bus stop in Braille, but nothing else, were not enough not enough information for some of our key stakeholders. And for that reason, we're exploring a pilot to add a decal to those signs, which has more information, route-specific information that will be affixed beneath existing Braille to have both raised lettering and Braille indicating the routes that stop there and the direction of travel. So in this case, in this example, 49 X49 southbound. Both the 49 bus and the X49 bus stop there, and this is the southbound stop. Our decals that we've come up with can only fit 2 routes and a direction, but that would cover approximately 93% of all stops in the system. And then additional routes with additional stops. We have stops with many routes stopping at them, could be targeted for e-ink installations, which my colleague Eric will tell you more about later. But our goal for this decal pilot rollout is to target locations that really maximize the positive impact for vision impaired folks and allow us to get the most feedback possible. So in rolling out the pilot for the decal and the additional information, we're looking to place stickers at 100 bus stops over 5 high ridership routes and get feedback from the visually impaired community about where to put them, where it'd be most useful for them in the short term, where we could get the most feedback from the most visually impaired people. And we also selfishly want to understand how the decals hold up to the elements. And this pilot is going to hinge on whether you can put these stickers out and have them stay out and not have too much downtime for the people that need them. So, peeling due to vandalism is one of the things we'll explore. And then, Chicago presents the wide range of elements that we need to test the durability of these. Heat in the summer, cold, freezing rain, regular rain, whatever. Can these decals survive a Chicago winter followed by a Chicago summer? So our tentative timeline here is rolling out, first stakeholder and target market testing this summer, and then producing the stickers in mass in September, and then installing in October, making people aware that they're being put out in the field, and then obtaining input from users in 2026 once people know they're there and get used to using them and looking for them. That's all I have. As Irma mentioned, there's that bus stop at Broadway and Montrose. Just wanted to flag that got installed actually on 7/11. I was told officially rather than 7/10, but close. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Delphine?
In terms of the new phase of the original bus stop with none of the sticker, is there the possibility that your sticker works out, you end up putting it in the new signs instead of having to, you know what I mean? Because you're running up to 29. So how is that changing the bus stops to become that new bus stop along the ways in the plan?
Yeah.
It's kind of silly to say we install it everywhere, but then we need, if the stickers don't work and you're like, oh, why not just putting in, or you want to have something that can change because that bus route can change all the time.
Yeah, you're thinking exactly how we thought about it, which is that because there's service changes and construction variability and detouring, a lot of this stuff is happening fast. And even though it looks like the metal bus stop signs for visually able people are not changing, they are changing constantly. So the thinking was what's being mass produced needs to be the same in everywhere, basically, so that we can keep our costs reasonable. These individual signs actually cost a lot, but there are efficiencies that the manufacturer can create. So the more we order, the cheaper we get an order per sign. But then, because of the variability of stops and because of how many different route combinations there are across the network, we felt like decals were the best option for those. But you're right in that if we could print custom signs for every bus stop, that would probably hold up the best of all potential options.
Any questions?
Sarah, I have a question. I was wondering if you could give us any details on the plan y'all have to seek initial feedback before moving on to the installation part of the process?
We don't have a great plan yet, to be completely honest. And we're happy to work with anyone here to develop a plan for, the QA/QC, for instance, of the Braille and raised lettering decals, or understanding where the most impactful stops would be. We accept, live feedback here, lists via email, whatever you want, however you want to get that info to us. But yeah, we want to put these at least at first where the most impact will be felt and the most feedback can be gathered.
I would strongly encourage you to reach out to the Chicago chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois, because they have plenty of people who would be more than happy to give you feedback.
Yeah, we've been in touch with them a bit. We presented, actually, one of the folks whose idea, who presented feedback that led to this was from the Chicago chapter of the National Federation for the Blind. So yeah, we're happy to reach back out and get all the feedback we possibly can. So thanks for that suggestion.
And I assume presenting to the wayfinding subcommittee, I think that would be a.
Definitely, and I think in the call, I was thinking in terms of location, like Chicago Lighthouse, like those location where and then those places know that people will look for feedback, and maybe you want to have a sticker QR code for a quick and dirty survey or something for those people that have targeted in certain locations, so they can have more than like 20 answer when you do that.
Yeah, Lighthouse, Access Living, by City Hall we have the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities. Would be my.
The Ogden Center. The Ogden Center.
The Ogden Center, yeah. So
Ogden Center, you said?
And Services Chicago on Adams and Wabash would be a good place too.
Okay, Adams, Wabash.
Yeah, if anyone pops up with any ideas, feel free to email me and I'll pass that list along Jeremy. And again, we'll definitely stay in contact with NFB and also the Lighthouse. And also, if any of you didn't get a chance to see, we do have the tactile bus stop sign pilot. So we can pass that along right now.
Be aware, it does say 49X49DB rather than SB, and we are aware of that. So that's why QA/QC is really important.
Can you spell out what QA/QC stands for?
Quality assurance and quality control. Yeah. So
like proofreading, someone's going to.
Yes, yeah, because there's a program that when you type out anything, it just writes it out in Braille. But if there's a typo and we don't notice it because we don't really read Braille, I have like a clipped image of the Braille alphabet, but if it slips by our notice, just having feedback from users would be great. So,
yeah. I would also state that in Braille, if you're just using a letter, because like we have abbreviations, so the letter S by itself stands for the word so. So I would strongly encourage maybe including a letter sign in there as well to indicate that these are supposed to be abbreviated for something. And
oh, gotcha.
S means so, B means but when they're by themselves. So just to prevent any misunderstandings.
Oh, that's great. You said including a letter sign?
Yeah, it's
so it's like
So the grade 1 indicator, it's just to indicate that like the character is its letter form and not its abbreviated word form.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
But there are also professional, like there are professionals that their whole job is to proofread Braille. So I know that there are services out there who do that as well.
And I would like to just say that I'm very impressed with the sticker. Like, I did not think it would be that pronounced of the, you know, the bumps would be that, the raised dots would be that tactile. It's very nice as far as tactile, the tactile nature of it.
Great. It's good to hear.
I hope it does last in the winter, in the summer.
Any other questions? As I keep staring at the screen like it's the actual people, but it's not. Sorry. I do appreciate the feedback and adding the sticker and trying to look at ways to improve the signs. So do appreciate the CTA kind of responding to that.
I do have one other. Yeah. The first signs that were made, the small ones, are those being replaced by bigger signs? I apologize if you already said, but I noticed these are going on like the bottom of the sign, and the one that's by my house, like it was just a small sign, bus stop with no additional space to put are those getting replaced?
Oh.
Is there another panel being added to the bottom of it?
No, there isn't. The sign itself does have enough space. So I forget the exact dimensions, but there is enough space to put the decals on the actual blue tactile signs. Which is, retrofit was one of our big requirements, I think, because of how many are already out there and, minimizing downtime for users. So, that sign, the signs aren't big, but there is enough blank space on them.
Okay, good.
I understand why you want the weather and the feedback for that time before you do the full rollout. But why does it need to be, I would say 4 years, right? Is that like a thing or?
Maybe, there are two different things going on. So the initial rollout of the tactile blue bus stop signs is likely to take until early 2029 as a conservative estimate.
Okay.
So that's 7,000 or so plus 7,000 plus additional blue bus stop tactile signs.
Okay.
And the combination of the availability of our crews who have to do other signage as well, and the manufacture of these is sort of why that might take as long as we've noted.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's all stop sharing. Okay.
My guess is we'll be in touch about setting up for the wayfinding.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, thank you, everybody.
And now, next we will have Innovation Studio updates presented by Eric Jensen, Project Manager for Operations Innovations.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Brady, let's pull that up. Let's share the screen. Share. I don't want to share. Great. So my name is Eric Jensen. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man in my early 30s. I have short blonde hair with a short reddish beard. I'm wearing a medium blue blazer with a light blue button down underneath and khaki pants. So yes, I'm here today to talk about e-paper display pilots. So we've got pilots with two different vendors through the Innovation Studio program. So we're going to walk through some updates on those and show some mock-ups of what the designs will look like as well. So on this slide, we've got some bullet points on the left part of the slide. On the right part, there's a map that we'll go through afterwards. And then on the bottom, there are two panels outlining just some key information about the two different pilots. So as a reminder for folks going through those panels, we have two pilots with Global Display Solutions and Papercast. These are two vendors. They provide devices all over the world, both e-paper signs, and they also provide LCD signs and other types of displays. So from Global Display Solutions, we're getting 5 flex displays. Those are 13 inches. They include a lot of functionality. They need about 4 hours of sun. We're also getting 5 low power displays, which are also 13 inches. But on the plus side, they only require about 1 hour of sun, which here in the Chicago winter, that's a particularly big deal that it only requires 1 hour of sun. From Papercast, we're getting 5 large displays. So these are 23 inches in portrait orientation instead of 13. They also require 4 hours of sun. We're getting 5 battery-powered displays. Those are 13 inches. In theory, the battery should last 3 to 5 years. In practice, we will find out. That's part of what Innovation Studio is for. So going through the bullet points on the top left portion of the slide, CTA plans to install up to 18 e-paper displays with real-time bus arrivals and alert information. This gets the alerts from the exact same place as ctabustracker.com, so the two should match each other very close. The displays update about once a minute, so it might be off by 1 minute, but in theory, they should be identical. Every single one of these 20 displays is going to include text-to-speech functionality. We're going to have 2 different types of text-to-speech buttons, I should say, so we can try out some different things and see what folks prefer. There'll be some space on one version of the signs to maybe even try out putting some of those stickers on as well. So we'll see depending on how that pilot goes. Initially, we had identified 25 potential high ridership bus stops throughout the city. We prioritized equity. We wanted to make sure we got them geographically dispersed throughout the entire city. We realized really quick, the north-south grid of Chicago makes solar panels really difficult. So particularly on east-west roads, buildings more than a story or two really provide enough shade that it's hard to get a lot of sun. So throughout this process, we had to kind of reprioritize a little bit. And, we still wanted to maintain this geographic distribution throughout the city. But the initial draft locations have changed a little bit as we've done these in-person solar evaluations. So we've completed our draft screen designs, which is really exciting. I think they look really great. I'm excited to show them to you. They'll be on the next slide after this. And the only thing I do want to note is that due to challenges that vendors faced obtaining parts, we're expecting kind of late August 2025. We were really hoping to have our first displays installed this month, but the supply chain issues have been unfortunately very real lately. So just going through the map on the right side. So it's a map of the city of Chicago. There's gray outlines of all of the different wards of our wonderful city. In the bottom left, there's a legend that shows the potential locations of signs. There's blue dots that show GDS and red dots that show Papercast, GDS being Global Display Solutions. You'll notice there are 9 blue dots spread throughout the city. There are only 7 red dots at the moment. We're still trying to iron down one last location for a Papercast sign. I know they're just dots on a map right now. We're going to release a full list of where the stops will be located once we've actually gotten the final sign off on all of them. But this is what we're targeting for the moment. A mix of stuff downtown with tall buildings to see where we can get shade, mix of stuff at transfer points, high ridership stops, different places, stops that have a lot of routes so we can try out these 23-inch displays and make sure they show enough information. So I think that sums up this slide. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next one. So here we have our example draft e-paper display designs. So we've got 3 different designs that are showing on the screen, left, middle, and right. On the left side, we've got what the normal sign looks like. This is showing upcoming estimated arrival predictions. So on the top, you've got a bar. It says estimated arrival times with the time and the date written on the right side. The time is really important. The thing about e-paper displays is they will keep showing the image. And so you don't know if that image is actually refreshing or changing if we don't show the time to people. And so for anyone who's looking at these, that's a really key part. On the left side, you've got your routes and you've got your destination. Next to each one of those on each line, we've got 6 different predictions that are showing on a 13-inch display. We can probably fit 12 to 13 on the 23-inch display. On the right side, you've just got a countdown. The plan for the moment is to only show real-time buses. So these are buses that are logged on and not show scheduled information so that we make sure we're not promising service that doesn't arrive. I don't want to get too far into the issues with the real-time feed, but we found that this is a pretty good way to make sure that we know a bus is going to come. On the bottom of the display, we can show service alerts, which is really great. So here it says new schedules in effect, special note. This is just an example alert. This is not an alert that actually exists at the moment. Special note, beginning Sunday, March 23rd, updated schedules go into effect on some CTA bus routes. See latest schedules at transitchicago.com. And then there's a date underneath that. So this can show service alerts for the specific route. We're still working out the details of which service alerts will appear on a sign. You don't want to have 17 different alerts because it takes a long time to cycle through all of them. Then on the very bottom, you've got transitchicago.com, just as a reminder that people can always go there, and a stop ID. So if you ever need to report an issue with the display, the display is not working, and you need to go to CTA Bus Tracker to see the stops, you can do that. Going a little more quickly through the middle and right ones, the middle display, instead of displaying the predictions of upcoming trips, it says no scheduled service at this time. There's a little fun photo of a half moon with a smile on it. It makes me very happy to see. The idea is that if there is no scheduled service at the stop, then we don't show service. That's key for maintaining battery life, and that's also key for maintaining the longevity of e-paper screens. If every time an e-paper screen refreshes, it uses a little bit more of the life of that display. And then the right panel here shows bus stop closed. There's an icon of a bus with a line through it, and it says this bus stop is currently out of service. This could happen for any variety of special events. We're exploring what that functionality could look like, but just for the sake of the pilot, this is what we're sticking with for now. Unfortunately, the text-to-speech demo that we were hoping to show is not working. So anyone who wants to stay afterwards can see what the hardware looks like, can feel what the hardware is, what the text-to-speech button is going to look like. And there's a little bit of Braille that I think says info, if the vendor didn't lie to me. They didn't lie, but if the vendor got it right with the screen. This is a demo unit. I want to be clear, it's a demo. The real screens will be in a much more put together enclosure that's more sturdy. But yeah, I think it should hopefully still be interesting to look at. So that's the update for the e-paper displays today. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Delphine?
In the estimated arrival time for the bus, is there like a reason, now you're displaying 7 next bus coming? And a lot of the other things are very small because you have all those next bus. Is there a reason, or you're like testing 3 next bus stop, the 4 next, how much do you really need to display? Because I'm just thinking the time is really small. The date, maybe it's okay, but I think thinking of yes, blind, but there's also all those people that have very bad vision. Those kind of things you say that are key could maybe be a little bit bigger, and how you can test it if you get more space.
Yes. So I think hopefully the 13-inch display, it's still small. We're working with our designer on that. Once we have this running on a website and we can put it on a screen, we want to reach out to a variety of different folks, working with Irma, probably to several of the groups that you mentioned to Jeremy previously, so that we can get feedback on this. One nice thing about e-paper is the contrast is really high. And one thing that our designer really prioritized was making sure it's always completely black or completely white, so that we don't have shades of gray that can hamper some of the visibility of the text. I hear you on the text size, and we'll make sure to collect feedback on that once we've got it up and running.
Number of that stuff, because it's so small, there's no way I can. I know it's just a small thing, but I'm how big would that be if it's an important feature again?
Yeah, I think the stop info is really helpful for kind of the debugging and troubleshooting portion. Hopefully, if the display is working, you never need to worry about what the stop ID is, but you are correct.
And maybe I'm assuming because these exist in other places, so there hasn't been an issue. I'm just wondering if you put like as of ahead of the time, because I'm just thinking if I did not know, I would, even though I would see the time, my brain would just be like, well, it says it's 12:13, even if it was 12:20. So I get why you don't want it to have it constantly updating, but I'm just wondering, yeah, if you did that, then it would be more intuitive to people where it's the first time they're taking the bus.
Yeah, I will, I just took a note on that on my notebook. I will definitely suggest that. One thing that we do plan to do as well that I forgot to mention is we are going to have QR codes and surveys so that we can collect feedback from folks in the field. What'll be nice about anyone who uses a QR code that's on the display is that we'll be able to tell which type of display they're looking at too, whether it's a 23-inch, whether it's a GDS sign, a paper cast sign. So that'll be nice. But yes, I took that note.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Yes, Cindy. I just wanted to know, how high are these signs going to be? Like, where are they going to be placed?
Yeah, so on the bus stop, I have a diagram that I didn't include here because we're still working through the specific heights that meet all the different ADA requirements. So the text-to-speech button, I think to make sure the Braille is at the right height, the baseline of the Braille text will be at exactly 48 inches above the ground, and then the button is attached to that below it. Technically, the button is supposed to be like slightly lower to meet ADA, but the button and the Braille are on the same device, and so I don't know, like you can't elongate the device, and it's a standard device off the rack that we're purchasing. The screen itself, I think, is going to be at the higher end of the range. I can get back to you with official numbers, but it's approximately 60 inches for the midpoint of the screen.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Other questions? Comments? And maybe like, cause you're working on this project, but I am curious, and maybe this else was going to get into the wayfinding committee, but I know there's some folks who've asked about like, other types of locating bus stops, especially for people who are like blind and where they can't see the sign. Are you guys continuing to look into that, or is that a question for someone else?
I think that's a question for someone else.
All right, is there?
Hey, Laura, this is Molly. Sorry, what was the question?
Like other type ways of locating bus stops for folks where the sign is just difficult because they're blind. Because this is something I've been asked a few times, where like the blue sign just is, does not work for them as well.
Yeah, I know came up in the wayfinding committee as well. There was some feedback that we heard about just sort of like street clutter and the fact that there were so many poles sometimes around bus stops and also other trash cans and things like that also made it hard to find. And so, as we move forward, I think what would be helpful is we get the e-ink signs, these paper cast signs up, and we're testing those. We've got the bus stop signs, and then we kind of come together again and start to have a little bit more conversations of, is it more signage that's going to be helpful? Is it going to be trying to actually clean up, just kind of using a parochial term, clean up around the bus stops? And I think that would be the right next step from there, because I also want to make sure that we're not continuing to add more things that create more clutter. And potentially what needs to happen is we focus on a couple key signs and then try to remove as much clutter as possible. So I guess, Laura, the short answer is I look at this is going to be an ongoing process of how we continue to refine, educating people and helping people who are visually impaired locate our bus stops.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I shared the image what they've done in New Zealand. They have a tactile strip at the bottom of the stub, so the person knows with their feet that they are at the right stub. I don't know how then it's a CDOT stuff. It's a sidewalk, but that's one of the way.
Okay. And we can ask CDOT if they're considering that they're on
next.
They're next.
So we can bug them about that too. Any other questions or concerns?
Thanks so much, y'all. If you have questions after the fact, please feel free to reach out to Irma, or you can reach out at innovationstudio@transitchicago.com. So thanks.
Thank you for presenting. Thank you. And so next we have, although I guess there was a change in name, is it Brad Topol is presenting CDOT updates. Sorry, I don't know your title, but yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brad Topol. I work with Dave Smith. I'm in the CDOT Complete Streets program. So that means we manage a lot of the projects that impact pedestrian, bicycle, transit, and safety. As part of that, we do end up doing a lot of reviews of ADA. We work hand in hand with Jeremy and others at CTA to talk through how to make bus stops more accessible and how to make improvements and things like that. So I am a 40-year-old white man. I have a maroon shirt on. I have a crew cut that is gray, and I use he, him pronouns.
Hey, Brad, we can't see you on screen.
My apologies.
Oh.
My camera was turned off.
Thank you.
You see me now. I can't see myself, so I assume.
Yes.
So, hello, everyone.
Okay.
I didn't have any specific updates that were handed to me off by Dave Smith, but I was going to give a short presentation on how we at CDOT kind of manage bus stops and ADA design. But if there were other specific updates that you had from a previous agenda, I'm so sorry I wasn't forwarded an agenda or any
No, Brad, this is Molly Poppy. I think that's a great area to start with. And I think just the other thing that there'll be questions on is bus islands. There's been some conversations recently at the ADA Advisory Committee about bus islands and some of the impacts that we've seen on disabled users as well as just other able-bodied pedestrians. So I think that will also be something that comes up that I know Brad, David, and I discussed briefly.
Okay. So you're good with me. I can share my screen and
yeah, go ahead.
present on what I have. Okay. Me. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my screen.
No.
Sorry, I'm not sure. I didn't share. Now you can see the screen, right?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. So I'm giving a presentation on specifically, it's more so related to how bike lanes and Chicago bus stops kind of interact with each other. Historically, over time, bus stops will usually always pull to the curb, right? There's like a parking lane or some sort of space where a bus will pull out of traffic to the existing curb, right? And that's where all of the loading occurs between pedestrians and transit users. And then with traditionally, or not, maybe not traditionally, but historically with bike design, what will happen is the bus stop and the bike lane will be shared, or people riding bicycles will have to kind of pull out into the active travel lane and then, pull back into the bike facility later on down the road. So our preferred design generally is to separate modes as much as possible, specifically anything with vehicular interactions. So pedestrians and people biking, and we usually like to separate those modes as much as possible because anyone who's impacting a vehicle is going to be a much more serious crash than maybe mixing modes between people biking and people walking and rolling. We do understand that this creates an addition, so we're switching conflicts out, right? We're switching from one conflict to another. So we're switching from a vehicular conflict with a person biking to a potential conflict between a person biking and people walking and rolling. So what I have, my image that I'm showing on the screen here today shows us some of our updated designs that I'll be walking through kind of our different ways these work. But what we see in front of us is a traditional sidewalk on the right side, and then we have a raised crosswalk next to that, which is a raised crosswalk will be a bike lane at street level. So bikes will go from street level up to a raised sidewalk level, and then next to that we have is like a bus stop loading area. So we have sidewalk on the right, a bike lane that is at sidewalk level in between, and then a narrower bus loading space to the left of that. This shows kind of one of our earlier concepts where between the sidewalk and the bus loading area, we do use those detectable warnings that you see at all ADA crosswalks. That's to signify, right, that there's a crossing space there. The markings for the bike lane show a crosswalk marking as well as a sign that says bikes yield to peds. With this type of design, what we have here is kind of like we call it a shared boarding area, where instead of having, we implement this type of design where we don't have a full width of space to provide a full like bus stop island that's separate from the bike lane. This is in constrained conditions, but we still want to separate people biking from vehicular conflicts, but we're also trying to make sure that we're accommodating bus loading operations, specifically having enough space for a wheelchair ramp to completely unfurl and load into that space. So I'm so sorry. Do you have a time constraint for me for this? I just want to make sure I'm not going to speak too long.
We're good. We're good, please. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. We're showing another example here. This has a similarly raised bike facility that is next to a boarding area for a CTA bus stop. This shows a bus shelter in it. However, between the sidewalk and the bike lane is a vegetated area that is grass and also filled with other objects like trees and light poles. This is kind of showing an example we have on Clark Street, just north of Irving Park, where we have a larger separation. If for sighted individuals, it is hard to see the sidewalk on the but it's on the very left side of the photo. We realize we didn't have any good photos showing everything, but you'll see a sidewalk on the very left side of the photo there, kind of showing that we have these pedestrian access right and raised bike lanes are very separated, and then there are very specific crossing points there with detectable warnings and additional concrete. So if you were walking along the sidewalk route to get to the bus stop, you would be following the vegetated edge, and then there would be an opening to cross into the bus stop. We have another slide here that's showing kind of some of the evolution of some of our detectable warnings at bus stops. We have an example here from Milwaukee Avenue. It shows a sidewalk on the right, another raised bike lane, and then a full width pedestrian bus median or bus island, where this example differs from the other one I was showing, where previously maybe we had like 4 feet of bus loading space and then a raised bike lane. This one has a full 8 feet width here. So it is fully allows for people to wait for a ramp to completely unload, and for people with who are rolling or in wheelchairs or need the ramp deployed to kind of fully maneuver within that bus stop area. This design shows kind of us using detectable warnings, but kind of elongated along the whole conflict area between the sidewalk and the bus stop, where previous examples kind of showed specific crossings. It was smaller, it was more the traditional detectable warnings, right? We use them, they're about 4 to 5 feet wide or 4 to 6 feet wide. This one's kind of showing a much more linear pattern, something you may see akin to like a metro stop. And then this next slide kind of shows their next kind of evolution of transit style design. These examples include TDIs, which are tactile directional indicators. These are being built by our newer streetscape projects, or what are also called our livable streets projects, where they're really rebuilding the whole roadway from building edge to building edge typically. In this example, we still have a similar sidewalk and a raised bike lane at sidewalk level next to it, but between that space, we have additional these TDI, tactile directional indicators, where a person with a cane would be able to detect these and kind of follow that edge along, and that kind of prevents or more prevents that crossover where people may enter a space. If I go back a few slides, some of our initial examples, some of our older style designs, what you may see is that between the sidewalk and the bike lane, there are some vegetated, there's some tree pits, there's some other signs that indicate this is the furniture zone, which is what a term we use in transportation to kind of describe that space between the curb and the pedestrian access route that's filled with other elements, trees, park pay to box signs, things like that. But what's maybe missing from one of these earlier designs is something like a TDI or tactile directional indicator that would provide that edge to kind of indicate that you were maybe crossing into another space. I am aware that I'm using it as an edge, but really tactile directional indicators are meant to be more of a positive wayfinding device. Some of the other standards we come across have them offset from the bike lane by 1 foot. And so that's kind of what's shown here. Additionally, for sighted individuals or low visibility, we continue to use with most of our raised bike lanes the bright green coloring. So that should provide some visual separation of the space. And then on the picture on the right here, what we're seeing is a sidewalk with tactile directional indicators next to it and a raised green bike lane. And there's also a full width bus stop to the left of that, which also has tactile directional indicators on the bus stop side to lead you to those detectable warning strips or detectable warnings that would indicate this is the desired crossing space. And then for sighted individuals, there are crosswalk markings on the bike lane between that space. We have another example here where we have, this is another example from Milwaukee. This would be near somewhere south of Ogden, north of Grand. This is another example of a bus median island or bus raised island here where we have kind of a separation of space between the bike lane. So you have a sidewalk. In this case, the image is reversed from what I've been saying before. There's a sidewalk on our left, and then we have a bike lane at street level. So there is a barrier curb. There's a typical Chicago curb. And then we have a bus median island that is at sidewalk level, but also has a curb on that side as well. So the bike lane's at street level. The bus island is at sidewalk level, and there is a crossing in between those two with ADA ramps on both sides and detectable warnings. Wrong way. And so this slide, we have we kind of have some design standards from Montgomery County. There's a few different other cities out there that have been putting out design standards and design manuals that kind of are pushing forward, kind of looking at how do we separate bike space from pedestrian space. You know, I'm sure many of you, well, in the most recent version of ProAg, it doesn't really dive into the separation of space between a lot of facilities across the country where we're having these kind of bike lanes at the same level as a pedestrian space. And so a lot of cities and counties have kind of started taking on like, what are the next, where do we get to? How do we standardize these treatments so that a blind individual can understand where is there another facility that they may be crossing into, or a conflict zone that is linear and is following that same, that's parallel to that pedestrian access route. So some of the examples we have pictures here show these tactile directional indicators and kind of show some of these standards that we're starting to use in the city here, where we're offsetting a tactile directional indicator 12 to 24 inches from a raised bike lane that's at sidewalk level. It's also showing some of those other treatments I was talking about where there's a detectable warning surface to show where you would cross that raised bike lane with crosswalk markings and other similar markings. We have an example from San Francisco here that shows kind of several different options of detectable surfaces that they were piloting. Going from left to right in the image here, we have a corduroy option, which is a tactile directional indicator, which has 5 bars that are slightly raised. We have another example called flat top bars, which is similar. It has 4 bars per segment that are slightly more raised. And then we have a truncated dome, which is the typical detectable surface you see at an ADA ramp to indicate conflict. And then we kind of have a newer one that's called a trapezoidal detectable surface. And this is it looks like a trapezoid. It has ramp sides and a flat top to it. So the flat top bars and the corduroy were both right. These are used to indicate positive wayfinding for people who are blind. Truncated domes are used to indicate conflict, and trapezoid is kind of getting at that. How do we determine an edge condition? So as opposed to positive guidance, it's more like this is the space where you are definitely crossing into a conflict zone versus you should be following these flat top bars. This was looked at by some other cities such as Austin, where this design was kind of also, the benefit to this is that it's high enough to be detectable by a cane, but it's also comfortable to be transversed or crossed by a person in a wheelchair if they had to access something like a parking lane or something other, or even if you needed to, there's many other reasons why you may need to get to the curb. And same thing if you're, if you're in a cane, if you're walking with a cane, it's not that you can't cross this space, it's just telling you that there is a conflict on the other side of it, or that this is the natural edge of the pedestrian access route. Jumping back to some examples from Montgomery County, they're also showing an example where we transition from a bike lane at street level to a bike lane at sidewalk level. And this isn't something that we have done in the city of Chicago, but it shows a bike going up to the sidewalk with tactile directional indicators around that ramp so that if you were a person walking with a cane, you would hit this TDI and it would kind of route you around a space that might otherwise appear as a ADA curb ramp. We have some examples from Seattle here. This is a treatment where we have a sidewalk on the right, and then we have a bike trail directly adjacent to it, and we're using something similar to a TDI. This is an early adoption treatment of a TDI where they were using, this is just showing different material examples out there where this is called extruded MMA. MMA stands for methyl methacrylate, which is just a new type of marking that we use that's super durable in the transportation world. But this just illustrates another example of a detectable. Well, in this case, the TDI was used as a detectable edge, not as a positive guidance. I mean, you could use it as positive guidance, but if you were following it with your cane centered in it, you would be half in the trail and half into the sidewalk. So this was done about 10 years ago, but it's meant to kind of illustrate some of the evolution of detectable edges. The example photos I show here are showing on the left. It shows several different products that are the trapezoid, kind of the trapezoidal treatment. One shows a product that's like a precast plastic product. The other one shows kind of a brick paver option. But again, showing this trapezoidal shape with ramps on each side and a flat top that should be detectable by a cane on either side of them. Other images we show are examples from Vancouver, where they were testing several different types of curb edges to kind of get at that, what is that right balance of edge between a sidewalk and a bike lane space that is the right amount of slope to be detected, but also to be transversed by a person in a wheelchair. And our bottom image here shows an example from Seattle. Again, there is a raised bike lane on the left that is the same sidewalk level as a sidewalk directly adjacent to it. In this case, they're using basically like a plastic curb. So it's kind of like a semicircle device with vertical posts on it. That is something that would be detectable by a cane, but it also really keeps pedestrians out of that space, and that it would be very not comfortable to be kind of crossing over that curb. So this was meant to provide even further separation between modes in a dense and busy environment. We have an example here from Austin, Texas that shows kind of a similar design to some of the ones I was showing from Chicago earlier, where you have a sidewalk adjacent to a bike lane and then kind of a space that is used for loading. In this case, the space is much smaller, but it does have, what I want to illustrate here is there are tactile directional indicators between the sidewalk and the bike lane, and they lead you along the sidewalk and then turn 90 degrees and lead you to the place where you would load into a bus stop. In the image here, we can see that's maybe slightly problematic in that where you might be standing as an unsighted individual would also be directly on top of the bike lane markings. In this case, they're using a red pavement color to indicate a bike space, but would show a pedestrian waiting on top of that red space as opposed to kind of in the beige sidewalk space that would indicate maybe where you should be waiting. And then we have another example here from Portland. Again, this is a sidewalk with a tree, the furniture zone in between that and a raised bike lane. So there's trees and a utility pole between that, and then a bus median. The difference in this example here is you do have raised kind of fencing, like metal tubing fencing between the sidewalk and the furniture zone, and also between the bus stop and the raised bike lane here. This is kind of further kind of trying to emphasize that space difference. I'm not sure if this would be technically detectable, as I'm not sure if that would be the horizontal railing if that's more than 15 inches above the surface level, but it was another attempt by another city to kind of provide a hardened edge where you would bump into it and then you would have to kind of travel along to get to designated crossings with detectable warnings and marked crosswalks. This example here is kind of showing a technical sketch from our design manual that shows how we would lay out a one of these shared bus stops per our current Chicago DOT standards. What I want to call out here is that our newest standards is calling out that we will have these kind of tactile directional indicators in between the sidewalk and a raised bike lane that would lead you to detectable warnings that would indicate a space to cross over into a bus stop loading space. And similarly, within the bus stop loading space, there's tactile directional indicators between that bus space and a raised bike lane to then lead you from, if you're getting off of a bus, it would lead you to those specific crossing areas. And then we have another kind of what we call plan view or top-down technical drawing showing an intersection, kind of a typical intersection here. Again, highlighting that we would have a sidewalk, tactile directional indicators, and then a raised bike lane, and then more tactile directional indicators with detectable warnings and specific crossings, getting you to a bus stop space that would be meets kind of like the typical CTA standards for like the width and length requirements for a typical bus stop in that space. The other thing I want to point out in this drawing is we're also showing kind of vegetative edges in certain areas here to indicate that you wouldn't need some of these tactile directional indicators if you had vegetation. Like in the top right corner here, we're seeing a sidewalk next to vegetation. The vegetation is your detectable edge. And then once you lose that detectable edge because you're next to a bike lane, then we bring in our TDIs that get you either all the way to crossing the intersection or get you to the detectable warnings to access the bus stop. And then the next slide is showing kind of a blown up example again of sidewalk, tactile directional indicators with detectable warnings in between, marked crosswalks, and then getting you to the bus stop space. And then we had one last example here. This is showing similarly a bus stop island here. So this one does not have a raised bike lane element. You have a sidewalk with a traditional curb and then a raised bus median next to it with specific crossings where you have ramps, ADA ramps that drop you down to that street level bike lane and then bring you back up into that bus stop space, which is at sidewalk level again. This is kind of our ideal because it keeps the bikes at a lower level. It keeps pedestrians at a higher level. There's, for the most part, a barrier curb between those two modes. Additionally, there may be that furniture zone as well with street trees and tree pits and utility poles and other sign poles to kind of provide that further visual separation as well as detectable separation, and then encouraging people to cross from the bus stop to the sidewalk at specific crossing points with ADA ramps and bike lane crosswalk markings. That's all I have. Any questions?
I have a number of them, but I'll let someone else go first.
Yeah, great.
Well, okay. I'll just start off. Thinking about the Chicago one where it's not wide enough for a wheelchair to deploy. I mean, I'm wondering about process and the extent to which CDOT is checking in and having disabled people who use, especially mobility aid users, test things out and check whether, because you're functionally turning what was an accessible stop into an inaccessible one. And I kind of, so I guess I just have concerns about that. Especially, I will note, Chicago is the bus stop that gets to Access Living, which is Chicago Center for Independent Living. And so there is a disproportionate number of people who use that specific route, who are wheelchair users and are blind.
I have two answers for this. So this specific example, again, what I'm showing is kind of what we're calling our shared boarding area. It's a narrower stop where we have bus lane and we have a 4-foot space of sidewalk, a 5-foot raised bike lane at sidewalk level, and then the rest of the kind of existing sidewalk, which has some street trees in it, and then the pedestrian access route to the left of it. this is still designed to kind of adhere to the CTA standards of like the width has to be 9 feet. So a typical CTA bus stop at the maximum has to have 9 feet of width, or I guess the ADA loading area, right? We have to unload a ramp has 9 feet of width. So in this circumstance, the bus ramp can completely deploy within that 4 feet of space there. And as a person rolling out of a bus on that ramp, as well as a person biking, they would kind of navigate each other in that space. So we still provide a level enough ADA space for wheelchairs to maneuver and change direction if they need to. But the idea is that there's still this level of interaction where people will be communicating with each other. And this is, again, this is at slow speeds, right? So people biking, yes, I understand they can go very fast, but if a ramp is being deployed, it should indicate that, hey, someone is getting off, and you can see that person getting off before those two modes ever directly interact. Versus like the Austin example, where it's very possible that someone, even an able-bodied person getting off the rear door of the bus might, interact directly with a person biking. So yes, I understand that we don't have the full width as we would maybe at a traditional stop here, but we're trying to kind of balance mobility and safety at the same time. This also allows us to kind of, from a bus capability, having the buses stop in lane provides better service, so they're not having to pull in and out of traffic. So I understand that there's a little more interaction here than maybe you would have at a typical bus stop here. But we're kind of seeking to kind of rebalance some of these pieces here, avoid some of the more serious conflicts. Also, we did work on this design with the Mayor's Office for people with MOPD, Mayor's Office for people with disabilities on it. We are hoping to kind of, as we're updating our standards, continue to follow up with them, but these initial designs were based on coordination with MOPD.
Okay, that's good to know. I would encourage you to also reach out to talk to CTA, and maybe, I'm very glad that you guys now present to this committee, but, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but just because you are both someone from CTA and you're a wheelchair user. So to be clear, like when you say interact, you mean someone who is hit. And like, I'm just thinking.
No.
Like, but but like, that's the risk, right? Is like an interaction. Yes. That is the risk. Would you feel comfortable deploying from a ramp directly into a bike lane?
It's definitely like risky, but I am like able to see as well.
Yeah.
My concern is someone who's not able to see.
Yes, that would be the other concern, is someone, because especially, it's cyclists or it's people who use scooters. Yes. And like, look, love an e-bike. I think e-bikes are great for the environment, but like that is folks going faster. So, I mean, and I know Montgomery County, I think there were certain parts of the pilot to try and slow folks down. But I will I will say I have concerns, and I think it's perhaps worthwhile to reach out to support MOPD. It is consistently underfunded, and they don't have anyone who's transportation specific, to reach out to maybe a number of the organizations. I think, Sarah, like NFB, probably you guys would be happy to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're reaching out to NFB, Lighthouse, and this committee. It's because I do think that there are kind of significant problems. And I appreciate that you reached out to MOPD and so that I would suggest going beyond that. And it's why, I encourage CDOT to also have an ADA committee and some folks there. Something we are pushing for. So you mentioned a bunch of the pilots. So is that like, are there specific and studies? So that's informed your guys, your future designs? Is that kind of?
Yeah, this is, it's always we're always progressing things. Like we're always kind of continuing to try out new pieces and say, oh, this works. We're going to start incorporating it kind of into our standard plans. Those examples I showed at the end of the presentation was kind of our current standard to date. And so as we like the tactile directional indicators is something that we're like, hey, this should be a standard element that we should just incorporate with every time we build one of these. We should be incorporating some sort of either detectable edge So in this case, possibly the trapezoidal piece or a TDI. I think what we struggle with as a city is that there are no great, I mean, PROAG is out there, but they don't talk about these very much at all. There's some older ADA guidance out there too with their, they kind of have their accessibility standards, but that doesn't get added either. So we're kind of relying on other cities as well as us trying out things and kind of trying to learn from Europe, but their standards are also all over the place, and there's no standard, there's no like great information out there that's like uniform and it's like, this is the best thing that works. So we are relying on other cities like Austin and San Francisco, who have done a lot more piloting than we have maybe of some of these further treatments beyond this, the example I'm showing here, this shared area. I'll say that when these were built, some of the other examples around the country, including Seattle at the time, they didn't have any of that. It was more similar to the Austin example where there was none of that space between the raised bike lane and the bus stop. You would just load Seattle and Austin. They're just loading directly into bike lane. And that was something like, we can't do that. We have to have enough space for someone to able-bodied either to walk off or enough space for a ramp to deploy. And then like be able to see each other and navigate that space and navigate each other through, eye contact or whatever. So
I would never
step up, but yeah.
As a rule, I think Europe is not typically what I would consider to be leading in accessibility. I realize they are very good on cycling, but not typically good on it.
They do a lot more of the wayfinding, like the tactile directional indicators, and please, many of you probably know way more than I do on this, but just based on my experience and webinars I've been at, you've seen the U.S. does not do very much tactile directional indicator wayfinding anywhere that I'm aware of. There's very small examples, and so that's kind of a bigger issue overall. So we take pieces from that and try to incorporate into our bus stop design.
Yeah, and I know that the part of the thing with PROAG is because they were in the process for 10 years. Like there were developments over the 10 years that they were trying to get those new rules out. I am curious if you've talked to the Access Board. I know the U.S. Access Board is willing to provide technical assistance to anyone who, that's where PROAG comes out of. And so if you have not, I would encourage that. And I know, and the person there is still there. It's not, they haven't so far been riffed, at least within a couple weeks ago. That
is really good to know that they're responsive. IDOT, we work with IDOT on a lot of just generic ADA things, and they have forwarded us some correspondence on their questions about TDIs to the Access Board. So we've started to review some of that, but that's good to know that they're responsive. And I think as we continue to update this, that would be a really great direction for us to reach out to.
I have more questions, but do folks have, before I ask more, anyone else have questions, comments? Is there, I guess, thinking through like future implementation of bike lanes and considering transit, is there a process? Well, one, I would guess in general, like a process and like, I guess I do see like updated standards with bus stops, but like thinking through maybe not having parallel routes because if, it does provide those increased like amount of interactions, especially I'm thinking for people who are low vision blind, so that like, like if you have if your buses are typically going the same direction, like it's not both routes. Does that make sense? Not really.
Not understanding what are
so like if you like are you considering with implementing like bike lanes, making sure that it's not on what would be kind of like parallel bus routes as well, so that if someone within
streets, buses. It's a network. It's a great network question. Each location is different, but we do, my group, the Complete Streets group at CDOT, we do implement like bus specific. I'm showing bike lanes because that's like the most critical thing at this time, but we do. We're working on other projects around the city to implement just solely transit bus lanes. Look, similar things like you see on Western Ave and other places. We're working with CTA has some of their own standalone projects on what was the Better Streets for Buses, but is now the Bus Priority Corridor Studies. I think is BPCS is the acronym. And so we're working hand in hand with them on those bus specific kind of, streets. So if you look at like modal priority in Chicago. Like some streets are obviously pedestrian first, or well, pedestrian first is always like the highest in our modal priority. Let me put that out there. But within the other modes, vehicular, transit, and bike, you know, some streets we prioritize bike treatments on, some streets we prioritize transit treatments on, and some streets are still kind of very vehicular focused. Just from a network perspective, we are expanding our neighborhood kind of routing between for our bike facilities. So we have a lot of, we call them neighborhood greenways. They're generally already routes that are comfortable to ride on, but crossing the major arterials, as well as the fact that a lot of arterials have the destinations on them that people want to bike to and take transit to. We do separate certain streets are bike priority and certain streets are transit priority, but what's more and more common is we're just having, I mean, there's CTA bus routes on most collectors and arterial streets in the city. And so anywhere we put a bike facility is almost always going to have a bus interaction somewhere, you know, 90% of the time on a major street. So I'm not sure I'm really answering your question well.
Yeah,
I think depends on the project and things like that. But
I guess I do have concerns sometimes about these boutique solutions, but I would encourage that as we think about bike networks, we also think about transit networks. And so that if someone is uncomfortable, that there's a default, you know, that they would try and avoid it, that they really do have options, especially when there's, you know, a lot of transit around. And I do want to be mindful of time, but, and I would, I guess, also looking to the greenways, because I will say sometimes, like, I would not say it's always intuitive, I guess, for cyclists to stay on the green part. And I don't know if signs will help deter that, but I do have concerns, like if there isn't sufficient, there is why you would not want to have sometimes them as elevated, but that they're kind of, like, I will say, in my neighborhood, there has been at times an increase of sidewalk riding. It seems like because they're not clear about it. And that's like a specific Foster treatment, but I do have.
Foster. Yeah. What we've seen on other streets like Broadway a long time, well, a decade ago, we put some bike lanes on Broadway south of Foster. And we saw that was a street that had a lot of ridership on the bicycle ridership on the sidewalks. Yeah. And once we provided this separated facility in the street for people to bike on, I forget the stat, but it was a huge decrease in people riding on the sidewalks. And so Foster, to me, I live off of Foster. I know exactly what it's like. And it's not surprising to me that you would see people biking on the sidewalk because the street feels so uncomfortable, to bicycle on. But that's why you get sidewalk riding. And the answer in our mind is providing, if we have the space and the ability to provide a separated space, we like to, because then it encourages people to bike to use that space and stay off the sidewalk. So when we've done it, it's usually the sidewalk riding usually goes way down. There's always going to be people doing it, but that's true of every no one follows 100% of the time. So
I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. Although, like, I think Broadway and Clark at times, like if you do protected lanes on both, that would actually be an example of if we are not having like bus routes that you're not having those interactions. Yeah, I guess we should be mindful of time. I think I appreciate your presentation, but I think encouraging reaching out to organizations beyond MLPD, understand, support them, but just I think, and just looking up, and I think just consistent process and implementation and thinking about transit and accessible interactions with the city as a network as well. And finally, I would say just, I realize with Wabash, there's, we're starting to have the adjacent parking spots, but in other places, the protected lanes, like there is an issue with, and this is an issue with paratransit drop off with people who have wheelchair accessible vehicles. ProWag has a very consistent solution. And I will actually note, CDOT was informed a year before ProWag came out. Like, and we deployed into the lane because the former chair of ProWag is the head of Access Living. I really hope that that continues. Installing those placard-only spots at adjacent lanes and at adjacent stops, and making sure that wheelchair accessible vehicles can deploy, and that like CAPS and PACE and all those things can deploy where they're. I appreciate protected lanes. I have many friends who bike. I do not want people to get hit by cars, but I also want to make sure that disabled people can get around. Is there any other Anything else? Sorry. Well, thank you for presenting. Really
of course.
appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
All right. And with that, that is the last presentation. Next up, Irma, we have the wayfinding subcommittee. We have the wayfinding subcommittee report.
Yes, I was not sure if I had to provide something. I didn't receive an email asking me, so I was just like, oh, maybe I should have sent you something. But I think mostly what the last meeting of the wayfinding, we spent a large portion of time talking about the RPM and how the visit would happen. That was important. I think there was a call for participation, and there was a kind of also thinking about how can we emphasize as much as possible wayfinding in the presentation and in the meeting. I was unfortunately not able to attend, so I hope that was the kind of comments that was also around wayfinding a lot. We had presentation on, I believe, the e-sign. That was like the detailed presentation. That was that meeting, right? So I think most of the wayfinding so far is providing feedback on specific project, and what we realize and in our discussion is until September, we'll always have specific projects to provide feedback on, and that's one of our main goals, like really regarding wayfinding or what are other possibility. And then maybe after that, September 1, I think for the next one in December, we'll have the conversation around the other priorities that haven't been tackled or think about yet by the CTA. And one of those were like, website information. I feel like the main thing will be sharing of information and how you can allow people to know what's available and where they can find it, to make their route accessible ahead of time in a way. Did I resume here? Because there was a lot of presentation and discussion on, Thank you for everyone who attend. I know it's beyond the CTA at ADA, so it's great to have all those participants.
Yeah. I think CTA has found it helpful, so I think this is, I don't know if anyone has any comments about it. Well, thank you.
Great conversation,
Yeah, yes, really appreciate it, all right, if not, next we have the facilitators report. Irma?
So this month is Disability Pride Month. We're celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Here at CTA, we're celebrating with different internal and external events. Internally, we will have a Disability Pride Month film screening of the Gang of 1980 movement, which will take place Monday, July 21st at headquarters, and a Common Grounds virtual event with Commissioner Arfa, where we will be discussing the importance of ADA on July 23rd. Externally, we'll be sharing accessibility videos throughout the month via social media apps, and we are proud to continue our participation in this year's Disability Pride Month Parade on July 26th. We will have our mini train and buses, as well as a sensory cooling bus that will be stationed at Daly Plaza. I'd like to invite the public to come and join and support this family-friendly event. The parade will start at 10 a.m. starting by 401 South Plymouth Court and make its way to Daly Plaza, where participating organization will have a table. This year, acting President Nora Learson will be in attendance alongside with Molly Poppy herself, and we hope to see you all there. In other news, Q2, I have conducted 21 frontline trainings alongside 2 bus familiarization training at Schwab Rehabilitation Center and Shirley Ryan Rehab Center. And I also attended 2 resource fairs at the MOPD and 1 Mobile City Hall event series. The City Hall mobile event is hosted by the Mayor's Office, and they will have multiple events throughout the summer. These resource fairs will offer residents access to services such as purchase of city stickers, residential parking permits, dog license, and city key IDs. Attendees will also have the opportunity to connect with elected officials and various government departments. The next one is this upcoming Saturday, July 19th at St. Aloysius Center, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., 15 North Claremont Avenue. For more dates, times, and locations, please visit cityclerk.com/about-mobile-city-hall. Also, CTA's frequent bus network added 4 new routes. Bus routes will have services added to ensure 10 minutes or better service scheduled between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. The summer routes that were added were the number 4, Cottage Grove, number 20, Madison, number 49, Western, and number 66, Chicago. The upcoming routes in August will include the number 53, Pulaski, number 55, Garfield, number 77, Belmont, and number 82, Kimball and Homan. And this concludes my facility report.
You. Any questions? Thank you. Next we have new business. Does anyone want to add a particular topic or discussion for the next meeting?
I have a question. It's in regards to, I visit adult day centers sometimes, and this conversation comes up. Especially specific bus routes, what's the effect of so many people just getting on the bus now without paying to the point where they don't even acknowledge the bus drive anymore? They just walk on. And I had one person who actually told me they counted how many people got on from a specific bus stop, from a stop to her stop, and she counted more non-paying riders than paying riders. And they're wondering, is that going to affect their bus route because that's their way of transportation?
Thank you for the question. This is Molly, and I apologize that I'm taking this call from home. I have a sick kiddo. So fare evasion is something that the agency does track. We do recognize that it does pose some challenges. What I would note is our fare evasion rates, while that individual did sort of anecdotally identify that there was a high fare evasion rate, we do find that our fare evasion rate is below what we see across New York and DC. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, so I don't want to give a bad number for New York and DC, but when we looked at it a couple of months ago, we did find that much of the fare evasion rates for New York and DC are in double digits, while ours are in single digit rates for both bus and rail. So I would not have anyone be concerned that fare evasion rates would potentially cause a bus route to not exist or for service to be cut back, but it is a challenge that we have, and it is something that we continue to look for ways that we can try to address fare evasion and bring that down, and especially address it from a perspective of ensuring the safety of everyone. What we do know is we've seen some individuals have kind of violent interactions with our bus operators when the bus operators request that they pay. And so that is first and foremost our goal of making sure that we don't put our bus operators or rail operators or CSAs in an unsafe situation by requesting somebody pay $2.25 or $2.50. So we're just trying to balance all of those things. But the short answer is fare evasion is something that we track. It is a challenge that we see, and it's not something that we see it at such a high rate that we have concerns from a financial perspective or from a high fare evasion rate could lead to a bus stop or bus route ceasing to exist. We would continue to run that service as needed. And I think it's something to indicate if somebody is not paying. One thing that we know at CTA is we don't have a low income fare program right now. We're eager to expand and have the state authorize that and give us the funding for it, because I think that will also help to address some fare evasion rates as well if we're able to get a low income fare program in place.
Thank you. Any other folks want to add something?
I have, yeah. It's been a thing, and I don't know if it might open a can of worms. But the question about accessibility and inside bus design, this is something that I think we should talk about at one point. The way, and I don't want to compare too much, but like being in Montreal not that long ago and comparing like just the open seating, that is just like one row of seating and everybody, like nobody needs to ask someone else to stand when they want to get out, like those double. I'm thinking mostly of that row of double seats that limits the ability of being in the middle. And I thought about that a lot because I saw a gentleman that definitely needed to sit. You could see it, but he didn't sit because he didn't want to like bug other people around and like having to ask to get out. It was so clearly that he had a hard time walking. There was so many things around, and I was like, if he could have just have a seat that you just pull down and sit next to the exit. I don't think he was in the way of everybody the entire trip because of that. But like those question of like bus design and accessibility, we're thinking of all the types of mobility, the older adult, like all of this and all this space it's taking in the middle as well that limits the ability for standing and going around each other. If that's a thing that's been thinking about, even the new bus still have that design, and I'm always surprised that that is still around. So I wonder if that's a talk we can have, or if it's a thing you tested with mock-up designs, or having people testing your size and
I will, Molly, before you respond, which I'm guessing you will, I will add something to this, which is a person raised actually an issue with the new e-buses. If your chairs are a certain size, two people with power chairs just can't get on. And like previously they had been able to, and now they can't. So yeah, I think that's and I know that's it's difficult because of who provides them, but that actually did remind me that someone raised that with me.
I can't see Elsa, so I don't know if Elsa's going to respond. So Elsa, interject if you were going to respond. We should do for bus designs, for the inside of the bus designs, as well as this e-bus conversation. Bora, I think it makes sense for us to have a conversation about maybe having bus engineering and bus operations come and present in an upcoming ADA advisory committee. I see Delphine shaking her head yes. So we'll work to have that, because I think this is a valuable discussion to hear about how we come up with our bus designs, why some of the efficiencies that we gain in the way our bus is designed, both from a standing perspective and from a seated perspective, as well as just a general cleaning perspective as well. But I think that's probably a really timely follow-up conversation for us to have, that we can talk about the internal design as well as the e-bus issue as well.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thank you. Sarah?
I had a similar, a comment also related to buses that I would like to learn more about, is like those new announcements about like letting you know when the bus is going to turn, or like if you're on the street, it lets you know like if there's a bus approaching. Mm-hmm. I feel like most of the time it doesn't say that it's turning until it's already in the middle of a turn. So I was just wondering if we could get a explanation as to like how those things work, or if like there's if you've gotten similar feedback from other riders.
Yeah, I don't know if we've gotten similar feedback. I've heard some other feedback from other riders about that particular security measure that we have on there. That is a configuration setting, so it is something that's configurable, and we continue to try to adjust that. So we'll raise that with bus engineering, but I would also look to you as when we have bus engineering come and present, that would also be something really helpful to raise, because it is something that we calibrate to, but we will need to continue to adjust to make sure it is doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Did you find the audio announcements? Were they loud enough? Were they too quiet? Is there anything else about the audio announcements?
I would say they're loud enough.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Then, and you're aware, I do want to, for folks who may know, there is the fiscal cliff, the transit fiscal cliff may be approaching. The state needs to fund our agencies more. This is a concern. Otherwise, there will have to be really significant service cuts, which obviously will disproportionately affect people with disabilities who disproportionately take transit. I know that the planning team is diligently working, and that the budget is, that you're working on 2 budgets, and this obviously isn't something that you're ready quite yet, but if we could have a meeting once kind of you have a better sense of what those cuts may look like. And since that might be before the October meeting, which is also relevant because obviously like the veto session. So if there's a meeting that, I don't know if you know now when would be a good time, but if we could, figure out a special meeting for this committee when kind of you have a.
I don't think it's going to need to be a special meeting. I think the next ADA advisory meeting is September 12th. Is that right? Irma?
It's October 12th. It's veto
Oh, it's
session.
October 12th. I thought it was September. Okay. We'll look probably to target something into September then. Oh, it's September 11th is the Citizens Advisory Board. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay. So we'll work to target a time. In September was my plan. We'll be briefing the Citizens Advisory Board, and then my plan was to do something similar for the ADA Advisory Board. So we'll work to have something scheduled for September, and I'll work with Irma and Elsa, and we'll get that scheduled.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else need? No? Then does anyone have any old business to discuss? All right, with that, I guess, the next meeting right now is scheduled to be October 6th, 2025. We may have a meeting sooner than that. Make sure to work with you guys.
Is it the 6th or the 12th? That changed everything for me.
This is October 6th, yes?
October 6th.
Yeah.
Wait.
Okay. Yeah, and that will, it's hybrid, but we do need a quorum on site from committee members. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do you have the motion? Can I have a second?
Second.
Sarah seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's you.
Consider that also an aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion to adjourn passes at 3:42 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. That, oh no.
Recording.